Welcome back, everybody. Can't wait to get started with our first Cabral HouseCall of the weekend. Thanks so much for joining me here today on the weekend edition of the shows. We love being able to answer our community's questions. Usually it takes just about, I would say, 10 to 12 weeks or so once you submit your question to be read live on the air. We just have a lot of questions obviously piling up over time, and that is why we want to make sure we get to all of them in the order they come in. So without further ado, you probably want to get to those questions, so why don't we get started right now? Just open up the document, and first up is Joseph. So we're going to answer Joseph's question. Of course, as we answer these questions, it's going to be based on my 25 years of experience helping and overseeing over 250,000 client appointments, but of course not providing any medical advice, treatment plans, or diagnosis of any type. All right, Joseph's up. Hi, Dr. Cabral. I'm asking this question for a family member. She had a small growth on her leg that looked like a wart. When she went to the doctor, they put acid on it to remove it, but she ended up getting a blister the size of a dime that, when healed, it is now a brown spot. Is there anything to make the brown spot go away? Thank you. Okay. So again, I can't give you a diagnosis of what this is. I haven't even seen what it looks like, but it very much sounds like what's called a keloid scar. That's Keloid. If you want to look up keloid scar and then click on images on Google, you'll be able to see and match up if this looks like the same. But it sounds like certainly what it is, and it makes sense because what happens is when there's an injury to the body, there's a wound or there's anything like that, you can actually get a secondary growth, which is called a scar in this regard, but you could just call it a growth. It's a keloid scar or keloid body. And what happens is it's thick, fibrous tissue that grows as essentially scar tissue, but instead of under the skin, it grows on top of the skin. And it can often be slightly raised. It doesn't resemble a mole really, but it is typically a darker color than your skin color, and it can be raised. To my knowledge, there is nothing that can be done for the keloid scars except to surgically remove them. But when you do have them removed, you're still left with then a secondary scar for the removal of the keloid scar. Now, the nice thing is there's typically no bad things about them. There's no side effects necessarily, but obviously they are a darker circular type shape, and some people simply don't like them there. I personally have one on my leg. I don't remember any injury that occurred, but yeah, interesting as to how they develop on the human body. If any of our listeners know how to remove a keloid body naturally, I would love to hear. I've heard things like apple cider vinegar. I've heard in certain peels, but I haven't seen anything that's completely effective because it actually starts below the skin. But if someone else does know, I would love to hear that as well. And feel free to comment below the video. Thank you. All right, Jackie's up next. Her question is Xanthelasma. What is it? Can I get rid of it on my eyelid? Also, how do you prevent it? And is it true it's a sign of heart disease? Sorry for multiple questions. Very nervous when I Googled it, when Google is involved, looking for the root cause and protocol on how to reverse it, prevent it safely. Already asked on group messages, referred back to you. Okay, yeah, happy to ask. And that's what you should do. You should ask at CabralSupportGroup.com. And then if they say, hey, ask on Ask Cabral, yeah, totally, that's great. Because sometimes and most of the time you can get your same day answer at CabralSupportGroup.com because, you know, we've done over 2,700 shows now. Today's episode 2773, and you can actually read today's questions if you'd like on that page. So I've worked with this many times. What it typically is a sign of is higher cholesterol in the body. It does not necessarily mean heart disease, but it can be, and because we're not giving diagnosis, at least a precursor, if not that in and of itself. It can also be a precursor for type 2 diabetes. Nevertheless, it is something that we want to obviously work on. For people that don't know what this is, and I believe the correct pronunciation is Xanthelasma, but I'm not exactly entirely sure. What it is essentially, it is a fatty growth that's usually yellowish in nature above the eyelid, and it often goes below as well. So it kind of encircles the eyes, and it's more on the inside of each. Very strange that that's where it grows on the human body, is the eyelid. Now, how can you look for this though? Well, the goal is this. You actually want to run your blood work, and you want to run what's called a lipid panel. You want at least a solid basic lipid panel, which is going to look at total cholesterol, LDL, HDL, cholesterol to HDL ratio, and triglycerides. And if you have elevated levels, especially with what's called an ApoE genotype 4 or 3-4, then it could be that your body's having a very difficult time processing cholesterol. And contrary to what all of the online gurus say, where cholesterol is no effect on the body, that is not true whatsoever. And some people, it can be quite detrimental. So you want to look to see if that is the case. You'll want to then be able to change your diet, get on some good nutritional supplement-based protocols to hopefully lower healthy levels of cholesterol and begin to work that process. All right. So that's the place to get started. You can run those labs on your own or with your PCP for that blood work. All right, Laura's up next. Laura says, hi, Dr. Ball. I started incorporating apple cider vinegar while drinking my 1 liter of lemon water and between protocol supplements and the probiotic in the mornings. It's before I consume any food since the parasite protocol supplements and probiotic have to be taken on an empty stomach. After I drink ACV or even when I use fire cider, which is predominantly apple cider vinegar, I usually get really lightheaded. I have a weird feeling around my eyes, slight even headache and itchy cheeks, and sometimes also a weird feeling in my stomach. Sometimes bluntness, pressure, even slight pain. What could be the reason for this? What am I doing wrong? If you could please explain how it works a little bit so I can understand a bit more and change something. Thank you so much. Laura, happy to help. Now, again, no diagnosis, but this could be, and very much seems like, a histamine-based reaction. So let's keep in mind, lemons are also high in histamines. When you add apple cider vinegar, anything fermented is very high in histamines. So now you're adding two things that are higher in histamines that could be causing the burning in the stomach, the itchy eyes, the lightheadedness, little headache, brain fog, all of that. And so you may just have a lower histamine tolerance. And so for you, apple cider vinegar isn't necessarily going to work, or at least at the dosage you're using right now. So you may want to just do the lemon water, or you may want to reduce the lemon a little bit and reduce your apple cider vinegar a little bit and see what your body can tolerate. So remember, and you can go back to my podcast on histamines, and if you can't find them, just ask at cabralsupportgroup.com, and you'll find what high histamine foods are, and you can begin to lower them a little bit in your diet. And also there's a great product as well called Hist Pro for anybody with a history of high histamine or allergies or things like that, such as myself. I use the product every day. It's a fantastic product. It contains stinging nettles and bromelain and quercetin, vitamin C, great product. All right. So hopefully that helps. And I believe, again, I can't give you the diagnosis, but I believe that is what you're feeling and seeing. And so we'll just have to be careful of that histamine load until we begin to rebalance that gut. All right. Spencer's up next. Hello, Dr. Ball. Sorry for the long message, but wanted to include the details. I'm a 32-year-old male. I've been sick for a decade now, have a homozygous COMT and MTHFR, elevated fungal markers on my oat. Let's see, told I have CIRS, tried the SIBO earlier this year by 1 month, followed by 1 month of the CBO without the results I was looking for, but I was under a lot of pressure and stress when doing it. Let's see, floating bowel movements, burping after eating, dry skin, shaky without starch after meals, hair falling out, low T3, high sex hormone binding globulin on labs, wondering what you suggest should be my next approach. Was going to run the big 5 plus the gut parasite test with one of your coaches, but would like your opinion on things. Yeah. So happy to help. And again, I see this all the time. So you're not alone. And I totally understand. You were diagnosed with what's called chronic inflammatory response syndrome, but that doesn't give you a real reason as to why you're highly inflamed. There's no doubt about it. It just seems, again, I have to keep saying, but I can't give you a diagnosis, but you seem like what's happening here is a high Vata-based pattern. So a lot of stress and a lot of catabolism. So you're dropping into potentially hypoglycemia, which is why you're feeling shaky without any starch. So because the adrenals are working on overload, and your hair is falling out, which is another catabolic process because the high cortisol, the high norepinephrine, adrenaline, and stress literally is causing the hair to fall out. The low T3 is because by high sympathetic nervous system dominance. You're not able to convert T4 to T3 as well. And the sex hormone binding globulin goes up, which reduces testosterone in times of stress. So to me, this is fairly straightforward. That doesn't mean it's simple, and that's not to negate your symptoms. But to me, this is straightforward as to how we begin to handle this from a stress and autonomic perspective. It also doesn't mean that there's not other gut issues, but it's difficult to heal your gut issues, as you're finding, without also reducing the stress. All right. So Spencer, hopefully that's a good place to get started. And the Big Five is a great lab set to run. And if you only run one, at least run the stress, mood, and metabolism. And all these labs can be found for anybody at stevencabral.com/shop. And then just go to the labs tab and you'll be able to find all the labs right there. And they all come with a consultation. All right, Heather's up next, and she's up last. Last question of the day. Would love to ask you about biotin. I recently came off of it for a week or two, and I needed to go back on. The body tingling was terrible, and I started to feel anxiety bad, and my circulation seems to be off as well. Is it possible biotin could balance a person? What would a doctor order for a B7 test? Yeah, that's really interesting. So typically, we do see that people are often a little bit low in biotin just because they're not getting it from food-based sources, or often even just from their multivitamin or mineral. You don't usually need a lot of it. Most people take in between 1,000 micrograms and 5,000 micrograms per day. Sometimes more is warranted, but at least for a period of time, it can actually begin to restore a lot of those biotin levels. And biotin is very easy to get. Like you said, it's vitamin B7. It's in our daily hair support product because it's great for hair, skin, and nails. It's in the daily nutritional support. It's in the daily activated multivitamin. These are all things we use in our practice. And again, all these things can be found at stevencabral.com/shop, including the lab that I'm going to share with you in order to be able to test for biotin. Really easy at-home urine-based test. Take a simple urine sample. You'll send it back to the lab, you'll get your results. It's called the Candida Metabolic and Vitamins Test. Not only does it look at gut function, energy function, neurotransmitters, and so much more, but it looks at your vitamin levels. And it's going to look at your B vitamins, because typically you don't want to take biotin on its own necessarily. You want to take it as part of, in conjunction to other B vitamins as well. So that lab will share with you your B12 levels. It will look at B6. It will look at B5. It will look at biotin. It will look at vitamin C. It will look at coenzyme Q10. It will look at N-acetylcysteine. It's a really amazing lab. And so I'm a huge advocate of that lab. Excuse me, losing my voice a little here. And I think that that'll help you to see what might be the right needs for you. And again, you might need to do a little bit more loading up on that in the beginning, but after about, let's say 6 to 12 weeks, you should be able to maintain as needed. Of course, you might need more individually, bio-individuality for you, but you should be able to maintain with something like the daily activated multivitamin or daily nutritional support. And then if more is needed, you could add the daily hair support, etc. All right, hopefully this was helpful. I appreciate everybody tuning into today's show. I will be back tomorrow answering another half dozen or so of our community's questions. Take care, everybody. Thanks so much for tuning into today's show. Before you go, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to make sure that you're getting our daily content, not missing out on anything. Functional medicine, wellness, weight gain, weight loss, anti-aging, living longer, stronger, and all of the most cutting-edge research. And if there's any topics you want to hear, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Take care.